Alright guys, so today I decided to make a video basically kind of going over what my future plans for the Corvette are. So like basically the current standing of the car is that it's got one wheel off of it, and I need to get a tire put on it so I can put the wheel back on, but before I do that I'm putting coils on. So I just got to restore the two front rims and do the coils. I'm hopefully going to be done with the coils and the rims and tires hopefully by Christmas time, or a little earlier than Christmas time. I'm just kind of trying to chip away at it, you know, on the weekends when I'm not working. So for the past few years now, I've been restoring the Corvette and trying to get it to factory. And the basis for my build is I'm trying to get up to the point where I can build my engine. So all of my work until recently has been to restore it to like a factory condition, and recently I've kind of decided to do an engine build for various reasons. I'll go over what I'm doing engine wise to the car, but there's a few things that I still need to work out before I can move to the engine part of my build plans. So things that I still need to do before I move on to the engine is I need to get those front coils installed, and I need to I want to do like a little bit of like other suspension work. I'm going to replace the rear monoleaf for a composite monoleaf and do like QA1 adjustable shocks so I could get my like rear end to be as like stiff or soft as I want it to be, mostly on the stiff side probably. But a little bit of suspension work. I'm going to do like not a full poly conversion, but you know, it's like a few bushings that I'm going to have are going to be poly, because if you do a full poly conversion on Corvettes, they tend to be like really rough, and then you could risk cracking the fiberglass. I also have a few other expenses that I need to take care of before I start putting a lot of money into the Corvette. Like I need to buy a commuter car for this upcoming school year, so that's going to happen during the summer, and that's going to take a big chunk out of my savings. So it'll take a little while for me to recuperate that savings, but I got plenty of like little projects that I need to do to the car that, you know, don't cost very much up until when I could save up a little bit more money. Now for the future of the car. The reason I started my channel was kind of to document what I'm doing to the car, and that's what I've been doing so far. But I really did start it to kind of document the engine in particular, because I'm doing something that's it's been done before, but it's kind of like uncharted territory somewhat. Since I live in California, the car has to pass smog, and my goal is to hit 500 horsepower and still have it pass smog legally. And a lot of you may be thinking like that's impossible and stuff like that, and I thought that before I started doing research too. I didn't think it would be possible, so I never really looked into it. So it was just pretty much a restore the car to what it is and, you know, leave it like that. But surprisingly, for cars that are like, I think it's 86 and older, that you still have to smog them, but the regulations are a lot less like strict than they are for later or newer model cars. There's like a few little like quirks about the smog like system that makes it like easier to kind of work around stuff. But the main reason that it's going to be legal to do this is because I'm using C.A.R.B approved parts, which are basically parts that the companies have paid money to get them tested to show C.A.R.B that the part doesn't increase emissions based on a basic stock part. And you may think that these parts are going to be like less, they're going to be like a less of a quality, but in all reality, the only companies that can afford to do these tests are the companies that are really popular and make a lot of money. So there's a perception on smog that is kind of like it's the evil, and a lot of hot rodders have that mentality. And I mean, it is a lot harder to get power because you got to worry about it passing smog. But basically with my build idea, I'm doing it because it's going to be fun, it's going to be fast, and I also kind of want to prove to a lot of people that, you know, later model C3 cars in particular, and any car that's has to smog, but it's still in the early years of smog, they're still worth building because you could pick them up for cheap, and you can build them still, and it's not hard. I mean, the parts are a teensy bit more expensive, but in all reality, it's not going to affect the performance at all. The parts that are CARB approved are very good quality parts. Companies that do have CARB approved stuff are like AFR, TrickFlow, Comp Cams, Crane Cams has some CARB approved parts, but it's all those big companies. They have a CARB approved line of parts that they perform just as well as the other parts. Those are just the ones that have been tested. So my build in particular, I have a GM Goodwrench 350, so it's an aftermarket performance engine. It's listed at like 200 horsepower and 300 torque for having like manifolds and a 2-barrel carb and stuff like that. I'm doing my build in stages, so between each stage of the build, I'm going to get it dynoed, and I'm going to get a preliminary dyno to see what it is. And the order that I'm doing my build in, I'm doing it from what most people are likely to do, like maybe like a more budget thing that, I mean, more people are likely to do than, say, stroking the engine, which is kind of in my last stages. So I'll dyno it in between so you could see how much power I gain from doing exhaust and how much power I gain from putting a cam in it and stuff like that, so you guys can kind of see what you guys want to do with your builds too. I'm pretty sure all this stuff that I'm doing is applicable to most V8s. The parts that are CARB approved, they do have product lineups for 351s. I mean, you could find, there's CARB approved parts for a lot of engines. Most of the V8s that were getting smogged were 350s anyways, so I mean 351 Windsors, 351 Clevelands, you could do, this stuff is kind of transferable in between the multiple brands. Alright, so stage 1 of my build is I'm doing exhaust. So Hedman headers, they have a exhaust system, not a system, but headers, long tube headers that are CARB approved. They have all the smog hookups and stuff. They're CARB approved and they're built for a C3 Corvette. And they're kind of like a block hugger design because there's not very much room in the engine bay for like a long tube, just a standard long tube header. So these headers are CARB approved, they're long tubes, great quality. Hedman Headers is a well-known company. And I gotta modify my front Y and stuff, and I'll probably do cutouts along the line. I don't know if I'm gonna do that on my first part or if I'm just gonna do that later on and see what it sounds like the way it is now. Right now my exhaust, I have Flowmaster catback exhaust system right now. It's a 2.5-inch mandrel bent tubing with like, I think it's 50 series Flowmaster mufflers on the back. So the cat back is good. I'm getting a performance cat that's not like a test pipe pretty much, where it's just like straight through, but like an actual catalytic converter, so it does its job really, really well, but doesn't affect the performance as much as a stock cat would. The front forward, I'm getting 2.5-inch mandrel bent tubing as well. It's going to be custom. I have to, weld it up myself because there's nothing really for long tube headers for a C3 Corvette that I could just bolt up. Plus, I need to learn how to weld anyway. So once I'm done with the exhaust part of the build, get it exiting air faster, then I could get more air into it and be safer and not have to worry about how fast the air is coming out. So the next part of the next stage of the build, stage 2, is intake and a cam. So I'm putting, it's intake and a cam is the main thing, but there's a bunch of other little pieces I'm putting in too. I'm getting an Edelbrock Performer RPM intake manifold. That part is not CARB approved, but it used to be listed as a stock replacement part for C3 Corvettes. And it has kind of the same dual plane shape that the stock one does, so I've seen people just like kind of etch off the Edelbrock label and spray paint it black, and nobody knows the difference. So that's one of the only parts that I'm getting that's not CARB approved that you can see visually. For a cam, I'm getting a Comp Cams 268H. It's a mild cam. It's a little bit thumpy, but it's CARB approved cam, so if you got a 350, you can put it in there. Along with the cam, I'm also doing timing gear drive, which is, if you don't know, is instead of having a belt or a chain that's running the gears between the camshaft and the crankshaft, it's two gears that go in between the camshaft gear and the crankshaft gear. So it's better for performance, and there's less of a chance of stuff breaking. Even though I'm not like making huge numbers, it's just kind of a good piece of insurance, and you don't have to replace the chains or anything like that. It won't stretch. Anything that I have to touch while putting the cam and the intake in, I'm going to be modifying in some way to make it better. Stage 3 and 4, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to just kind of bundle them up together, but after the intake and the exhaust and the cam is done, I'm getting TrickFlow Super 23 aluminum heads, which are CARB approved as well, and I'm going to stroke the engine out, so I'm going to stroke it from a 350 to a 383 stroker. So I got to take it to a machine shop to do that, because I can do it myself, but I kind of want it to come out, good. I don't want to chance it something going wrong. I want it to be good. So I'll have to take it to a machine shop to get that done. But I don't know if I'm just gonna put the heads on the way it is now, or wait till I get the stroker. I'll see how much money I have then, but we'll see what happens with that. But that's pretty much the build once it's stroked out. I'm hoping, my estimation in my head, I'm hoping I could get over 500, but we'll see what happens. And it should be running like a 10.5 to 1 compression ratio, so pretty high compression. Should run off the pump gas still. If I have to put octane boost in it, so be it. This video is probably going to bring up some questions that I didn't get to or didn't answer. If you have some questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you on those. If you like the video, please leave a like. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.